most awkward wave.
All right, everybody. Welcome back to yet another episode of the Creative Krunch Podcast. And gotta say, maybe an hour or two ago, the weather was a little bit nicer. The sun was out, a little bit warmer, a little less wind. Felt like we could conquer the day and do an outside episode, but now a little chilly. Sun is not always out. A little windy. A little chilly. I already said chilly, but we'll say it again just to really bring home the point. But we're still here. So, yeah, welcome back to the Creative Krunch Podcast. Let's go.
Let's go.
Let's go.
I like how I put in zero effort to the introduction at all. I'm just along for the ride. I'm just like, yeah, whatever Reed says.
You're like the guest.
Exactly.
And now let's bring on our co-host that's more like a guest every episode. Here comes the sun. That feels nice.
So what are we doing?
So again, it's been a while since we've got one of these out, but we did try. We went to Colorado a while ago, like a month and a half ago. Beginning of March, so like a month ago. And we filmed an episode in the car on the way there. And what was it? The audio was bad, or my mic gave out or something. So
it was just so echoey. We need these mics in the car. We tried to do it with DJI mics, but we were right next to each other, and so it creates a ton of echo.
I noticed looking on our YouTube channel, I know we took the car episode, our very first car episode, off of Spotify, but it's still on YouTube. And that one was a complete failure too, wasn't it? Audio-wise?
It just didn't sound good.
Yeah. So eventually you'll get a good, solid car episode, but might be a while till then. But so we tried to make an episode, didn't work, wasn't up to our standard, wasn't up to our quality. So we've been on a little MIA, but here we are.
We should hire a driver. Just to drive, like hire Tim to drive for us and just, hey, can you just drive while we record in the back?
While we podcast.
So he's like our driver. And he'll, every once in a while, we'll put a mic on him, and every once in a while he'll add his, like.
Tim gets like super anxious isn't the right word, but like super flabbergasted when he's driving. Like he'll be like entering on a ramp, and he just sees a bunch of cars coming. He's like, oh my god, oh no. So every 5 minutes we just cut to him like freaking out trying to enter onto a highway. But can't help but notice that you're just staring at your phone.
I know, I'm looking at this stuff that we're going to be talking about. There's a lot of people. I've already had like 30 people comment.
Oh, really?
And they're like, do you want to buy my FX3 for $10? No, they didn't.
So what Ben is actually talking about is Ben and I have been toying around with the conversation with the idea of possibly switching from our trusty, lovable Canon cameras for the last several years and maybe jumping ship and moving over to the Sony crew. And we thought, since we talk about this so much, why not make a podcast episode about it? So
yeah, well, thanks for inviting me to come on.
Yeah, so I brought on our co-host guest. Our guest co-hosts are
gosh, I remember. So I literally, like, before we recorded this, we were driving over to this park. I posted on a couple Facebook groups, 2 Facebook groups. I just said, why do you prefer Sony over Canon or vice versa? Versus.
Yeah, it was vice versa.
Vice versa. And a lot of people, it's one of those topics that just gets people going immediately.
And I wanna start this before we really dive into this. If you're new into the filmmaking game or whatever, gear actually does not matter at the beginning stages of your journey. We're at a point in our businesses and our career at the level of filming that we're doing where it does matter a little bit more. And Canon's a great camera brand, and who knows, we might not even switch, but Sony just seems like it has a little bit more to offer for some of the things that we try to do. So just to preface, gear does not matter. That's not what we're saying in this episode. We're just going to kind of hash out some conversations about why Sony would be better maybe versus why it wouldn't. Just do some pros and cons to the old switcheroo.
Yeah. When do you think the first time you've kind of considered? So you're like, man, maybe we should actually think about this.
Well, it's funny because like my very first camera was a Canon 70D. Just bought it like a bundle kit on Amazon, like with all my savings. And I love that camera, and I used it, and I use it for everything. It was a good starter camera. Ended up selling it to Tim. Excuse me. And then I switched. I jumped ship. I liked Sony, and I decided to give it a try. So I bought Sony A7 III and used that for about a year and a half. And then I actually won in a giveaway a Canon EOS R, which prompted my switch back to Canon. And from there, the business grew, skill grew, and I just started to acquire more and more gear, more cameras, more lenses. So I've always seen a benefit to like both, and I've never really been set on one camera brand or the other. But I think there's just a lot of drawbacks to the Canon that kind of makes you think that Sony just doesn't have those issues.
Yeah, so we both shoot on the Canon R6 Mark II, which is a great camera. We shoot C-Log 3 for most stuff. We shoot the RF 24-70. We have 70 to 200, 85. And I feel like at weddings, at least, we can only shoot C-Log 3 for so long before we have to switch to a neutral profile so we don't get a ton of noise. Has to be like perfect conditions for us to shoot C-Log 3 all day.
Which is annoying because of how good C-Log 3 looks when it is the right conditions. You get beautiful color, beautiful dynamic range, beautiful everything to it. So when we're like editing, we have all of these shots in C-Log 3 that are just gorgeous, and then we had to switch to neutral profile when it got darker, and then you can quickly tell the difference in the color quality, the image quality, the dynamic range, all of that stuff. So that's one of the big annoyances, where Sony doesn't have that problem because they have dual native ISO, where you can pretty much shoot S-Log in any condition and it looks nice and good.
Yeah, the dual native ISO is huge. I don't know why more cameras don't have that. For those that don't know what dual native ISO is, essentially you have an ISO level that, how do you describe this so it's easy to understand? You haven't.
I don't even think I completely understand it, so I'm not the one to try to educate others on it.
You have an ISO level that makes your.
I don't think Ben can even describe it.
Essentially, you have to have this ISO level so that your footage looks the best possible.
Yeah. When you're shooting in a log profile, there is a
base level,
specific base level ISO that you need to shoot at. I don't know why. It just works that way.
Every time you increase that ISO, you add just a little bit more noise.
Yeah. And
it's like significant. Like when you shoot in a neutral profile, you won't notice that noise until like
you're at like the
3200, 6400, some of those higher ISO levels. But with log, you add just one stop of ISO, you're going to start to introduce noise significantly. Now, Sony has two of those ISO levels. So one of them is, every camera is a little bit different, but most of the Sony cameras that can do dual native are 800 and 12,800, which is crazy because even in a neutral profile, 12,800 ISO, you get a lot of noise. But essentially, 800 looks just as good as 12,800, which is just mind-blowing to me.
Yeah, that's crazy there's even a way to do that, and it's crazy that Canon has not jumped on board with that or figured out how to do that quite yet. So, if we're talking about points for Canon versus Sony definitely wins in the department of log shooting, just for the,
and even DJI has a couple cameras, like the Mavic or the Mini 4 Pro it's like 800 and 1600 ISO. They
for
have
the drone.
Two dual native ISO, so you can shoot in really low light, like after the sun goes down.
So yeah, it's obviously a easily attainable thing. Not easily, like not to people like us.
Yeah,
but
I think it has to do with the sensor, but
there's a way to do it. It doesn't make sense that Canon doesn't do it.
The benefit of having dual native for weddings is that you can shoot S-Log3 all day long if you wanted to.
Yep, beginning to end. Once you get into the darker reception or the dances, you can bump that up to 12,800 or whatever it is on your specific camera.
Yeah, what's crazy is there's instances where you might need to go to 12,800 and put an ND filter on to expose it the way you want to.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, the fact that Canon doesn't have that. And the other thing is, when you do switch to a neutral profile on, I think the C70 is a little bit different, but like our cameras, the R6 Mark II, you switch to an 8-bit profile, so your colors are a little harder to grade.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there's a bunch of science behind everything too that we are not qualified to really touch on, but yeah,
you lose dynamic.
You switch
range.
to
8-bit, you lose dynamic range. You lose some of the color grading.
Your color looks a little bit more flat. You can't bring as many colors in or take as much out. There's just a lot of. It's essentially for photography like shooting RAW versus JPEG almost. You just have way less room to get creative with what it looks like in post. But so yeah. For the log shooting, Sony definitely has that one.
Yeah, what's cool too about Sony is you don't have to shoot an S-Log3. You can shoot in Cinetone or something, and you still get 10-bit. I think you lose a little bit of the dynamic range, maybe. To maximize dynamic range on the Sony cameras, you gotta shoot an S-Log3.
But
I think you might be able to do RAW, but that's.
But their plan B is even better than Canon's plan A for the most part. So
yeah.
So yeah, 1 point up to Sony. What's another thing that we frequently discuss?
Overheating.
Okay, this one's tricky though because I've heard stories of Sony's. I don't know if like the FX3, the specific camera that we would be interested in, but I've heard stories of Canon or Sony's overheating as well.
Yeah,
but
it's just not as frequently.
Far more frequent.
We probably deal with it every time we shoot. Like it's on the line of like this might overheat.
Okay, but I'd fight that a little bit. So 2022, we were using the Canon R6. And yes, that Canon bug on me. That the Canon R6 is going to overheat. If you're shooting in 4K, it's going to overheat. There's no question about it. But the R6 Mark II, it's definitely better.
Yeah, it's still definitely better.
You can still get yourself into a situation where it might overheat or it gets close, but I don't know, last year, 2023, using the R6 Mark II the entire year, I think I've been close, but I don't think I ever ran into an actual full-blown overheated camera shutdown moment. I think you did.
Maybe once, yeah.
But, I mean, that is way...
It's a little easier to anticipate, but the fact that we have to anticipate it is...
It's annoying, yeah. If it was just completely taken away, that would be ideal. And Sony, another point up to Sony, that's got it in the bag. The FX3, like, you can shoot all day, 4K 60, 4K 24. You can use it, continuously run, and it's pretty reliable. Obviously, if you're shooting in Texas in the middle of August or something, every camera's going to struggle a little bit. But So yeah, Sony's got some overheating Sony doesn't have as bad as overheating problems as Canon does, which is funny because their earlier cameras, like the A7 III and the A7S II or whatever, those things overheated in like not even hot environments. So they figured something out.
Another thing is the I literally just had it. You can input LUTs on the FX3, which you can't do that on Canon.
Are you talking about like just on the camera, or do you have to use an external monitor for that?
You can just put them on the camera, which is pretty sweet. So you can put the RE LUT on the camera, so you can kind of see what it looks like right out of camera.
Yeah.
When you put the LUT on it in post.
And you can put like what's it called, an assist on the Canon, or a color assist or something like that when you're shooting in log, which gives you a general idea of what it looks like in real life. But it's definitely not as good as like if you were to be able to import your own LUT on there with what you're actually going to be coloring in post. So
the other thing is shooting. If you want to shoot in frame rates higher than 60, you have to switch to 1080. At least in maybe not in the R5 or the C70.
But the R6 too.
But the R6 Mark II. And I think the price difference too. I mean, obviously, like they're saying, like, oh yeah, that's R6 Mark II is like a subpar camera to the FX3, but I feel like I guess a closer match would probably be the C70
versus the FX3, which we have also toyed around with the idea of getting C70s.
But there's a significant price difference,
and giving the cinema camera line, Canon line, another shot. But I think we've kind of fallen into this, and we've seen this over time. There are so many Canon shooters that have used C70s or used R5s or R5Cs or whatever that are switching over to Sony. And when you start to see that, and you get to a point in your career and your filmmaking journey where it's kind of discouraging that like we're still on the R6 Mark II when people have, advanced the cinema line in Canon, and it's still not good enough for them, and they still switch over to Sony. So I think just over time we've seen so many people switch. We've seen so many articles, everything. We see it almost probably every day, where it's finally got us to the point where we're at least considering or talking about it more.
Yeah, it'll probably happen unless Canon pulls like a draw 4 wild card or something where they change their method of how they. Canon just, I feel like, tries to please everybody.
Canon, I think what happened is Canon kind of was the guy, like the brand for a while, especially for hybrid shooting, photography and video. And then I think Sony saw that is cold wind. I think Sony saw like a dip in the market where the people that just want to focus on video, and I think they started making cameras tailored towards that, and I think that is where they began to outshine Canon.
Yeah.
They started making cameras specifically for video at a significantly lesser price than the cinema line of Canon cameras.
Yeah, Canon just has a lot of little things that they don't add to the camera that I feel like could easily be added. Like, I feel like Sony isn't afraid to just, here's a firmware update that's
fixes all the problems, fixes all the bugs.
Yeah, it gives you this new, like, most recent thing that I think I can think of is you can now do time code with, you plug in USB-C so that the camera audio still sounds like normal camera audio, but it embeds the time code so you don't hear the time code sound. That was my biggest thing with trying to decide if I want to do time code.
There's a spider that was like crawling on my mustache.
Yeah, so, or like they added, what is the traditional 4K? It's like 4,000 by 2,000 or something, rather than 3840 by 21. They added the DCI 4K or whatever that one is called.
Oh,
Which is
yeah.
a small update, but the fact that they add that in the firmware.
Well, what it seems like, and maybe it's just focusing more on like the business structure, not even the cameras. It feels like Sony is way better about listening to their customers and like taking the feedback for real and putting it back into their products. Where I know Canon does the same. Like, I mean, if you're going to be a successful business, and Canon is a very successful business, but I feel like they just don't care. I feel like they are always going to be mainly a photography camera rather than even try to really dip their toes in the market of video past their cinema lines. If that, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know if that makes sense. Makes sense to me. But.
Yeah, Sony. I just feel like the FX3, for instance, it just feels like one of those cameras that's going to be good for a long time.
Mm-hmm. And and you touched on it a little bit to go into some of the cons of Sony is, oh my gosh, they are expensive.
Yeah, but
to
be fair, the FX3, I think right now you can get it for $3,700. The C70 you can get for $5,500. And where Canon gets you is the lenses.
It's true, but when you think, I mean, I would say the R6 Mark II and the FX3 are a comparable camera. There's clearly one that is much better, and it's the FX3. But like, so for
what they can do, yeah.
For the R6 Mark II and like an RF 24-70, it's maybe $4,300. And then for an FX3 alone, it's pushing 4K.
Yeah, it's
so like there is quite, but again, I just said it is a better camera. So it like you get what you pay for, kind of sort of deal. I have no doubt that if they weren't as expensive and if Canons were easier to sell and if there was a way to just do a complete trade-in thing, I think Ben and I would have probably already done it and switched over. We're just sitting at a spot where it's like, I don't know if it financially makes a bunch of sense right now because we're able to make what we make with our gear.
Yeah, it's great for content creation, weddings. But I feel like if we ever want to get into bigger projects like documentary or like, I don't know, big corporate clients that we have to have teams with us, like our little R6 Mark II isn't going to cut it.
Yeah. I feel like there's pros and cons list.
It just feels like a consumer camera. Like anybody could go and be like, yeah, I'll just get that camera, R6 Mark II, sure. But like DJI, there's two different brands. There's consumer drones like the Mavic 3, the Mavic Cine, but then you also have people that are getting like the Inspires, the Enterprise.
Yeah.
Now that's a whole different thing, but I'm starting to feel like we are part of the consumers.
Right.
I'm feeling like we're not in that. Obviously, we're skilled at what we do, but like, I feel like
I think
equipment doesn't align with our skill set.
That's kind of what I was saying in the beginning too, and I want to reiterate that for anybody listening is like, gear doesn't matter to an extent. So if you're starting out or you're a couple years in and you're making films, content off of what you have, that is good enough. That is good. Whatever you have, you need to be shooting, creating, whatever. Ben and I, being in the industry for 6-7 years now, I don't know.
7 wedding seasons.
7 wedding seasons. We've hit a point. I'm not saying we're great at what we do. I mean, I'm happy with the work that we do, but I think we're hitting a point where it's like, okay, it's time to. It's comparable to like when 1080 and 4K. When 4K was newer, there were still a lot of people shooting 1080, and then there was people finally moving over to a 4K camera and 4K videos. Like I feel like we're at that 1080 spot again. We're still in the shooting 1080p, and now it's time to take that next step
the
up.
fact that we have to, we're going to intentionally shoot something in 120 frames per second. I know when I shoot that, I'm like, I'm going to have to upscale this in post, which not a lot of people will be able to notice. Yeah, that was a big fly.
That was like a hornet for a second. Another thing where Sony outshines Canon is the IBIS, in-body image stabilization. Canon's just quite frankly,
it does good to a certain extent, but
it does okay, and it's passable. But I was shooting something yesterday for Little Lights, and I was doing it all handheld because my gimbal was dead. And it's crazy how smooth it looks on the camera. And then when you get it into post, you see all these jitters and micro jitters. And that is so annoying. And you hear everyone that shoots on Sony almost exclusively shoots handheld. And it's buttery smooth when they want it to be, but they can also like make it have that handheld look effect. But I don't know, that's a big one. Like I hate the gimbal. I loved it for probably a couple years. I thought it was an incredible tool. Now I feel it hinders me more than it helps me.
Yeah,
except for
I like
very
specific shots.
specific things. It is a great tool, but for the run and gun type of shooting we do, specifically for weddings, it's just extra weight. But we kind of need it when we want the buttery smooth type of shots.
Yeah, I feel like because on our cameras, if you shoot anything less than 35 and you try to go handheld, like anything less than 35 millimeters, so anything between 24 and 35 or 16 or whatever focal length is less than 35, you get warping just the way Canon does their IBIS, but you don't get that with Sony based on my experience with it, shooting with our friends who all have Sony.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. We both have had experience shooting on, like, specifically the FX3, which is what we would more than likely upgrade to. And but I look back. So when I was shooting with Aaron Masterson at one of his weddings, I was using his FX3. I didn't sit there and be like, I loved it. Like, I honestly was shooting and I missed my Canon. But I don't know if that's because of just the familiarity with it and the comfortability with it, or was I honestly like, I like the Canon better. That's one of the. I think I like that's one thing I always go back Canon. To.
I like shooting on the Canon. Like, it just feels good. The buttons and everything feel like they're in the perfect spot to hit. That's definitely what my experience has been as far as shooting with like Ryan or Aaron.
Yeah, didn't you kind of say the same thing though with like you didn't love shooting on the Sonys?
Yeah, it definitely.
Do you think that is from just the comfortability that you have with shooting on the Canon? You've been doing it for 7+ years, or do you think it's because you genuinely didn't like it?
I think it's just because I don't like it. I think
So
it feels like
you see our dilemma then.
There's a little bit of like, the only way I can describe it is it sometimes feels like it's laggy.
Mm-hmm.
You tap something and you move your finger, and it might be milliseconds, but like then you'll see the thing move, or like you'll see the icon change. There's just a little bit of a delay. It feels like. And then the menu system, I'm sure I could get used to. The menu system is just so much more intensive in Sony, I feel like.
Yeah, and I mean it's one of those things, like the more we use it, the more we get comfortable with it. Like that completely makes sense. But I think one thing, a big thing that's notably important is Canon's autofocus is incredible.
Yeah, but based on these comments, they're saying Sony has better autofocus.
Okay, but that's just opinion based, and we're just chatting.
Yeah.
But okay, so from our opinions, from me using the Sony, from you using the Sony versus using our Canon, the autofocus on the Canon is
I
so
think
much better. I mean, at least that's what I think.
there's a lot less. Okay, what I've found is when you use autofocus with Sony, you have to, as long as you help it get to where it needs to be, like you're like, I want that to be in focus, and it's tracking it, it tracks it great.
Mm-hmm.
Canon, I feel like, just knows that's what needs to be in focus.
Yeah.
So you have to do a lot less assisting. Like it knows which eye, like the person might be a foot in front of another person. It knows that person needs to be in focus, or like, I don't know, little things like that. I feel like the focus just feels a lot more, just a quick response. It holds a little bit.
But then again, to be devil's advocate, like we've only used the FX3 a handful of times.
Yeah, and I've only really messed around with like the tracking. I haven't.
And I don't think I've used an FX3 with like actual Sony glass. I think it's always been Sigma or Tamron or whatever, which could be an issue.
Now, to be fair to Canon, there's been rumors about the next Canon camera is going to implement the first version of AI autofocus. So I don't know what that means. What was that?
I think these geese are ready to pounce on us.
But yeah, AI autofocus. I don't know what that means. I don't know how it.
Honestly, that scares me. It scares me a little bit. Like what?
I'm sure you can turn it on or off, but.
Or do you think it'll be what I would see it as being is you're able to select what's in focus, like in post. Like, doesn't the iPhone or maybe the Google Pixel does that? Do you know that commercial I'm talking about where it's like they like take a photo and they're like a band and then they keep touching on the other person's face and then they're in focus and the other person's blurry and they're like, well, I like this way better, and then they touch their face and then they become in focus, the other one. That could be a game changer. I don't know how that would work, and just where AI is at today, like it's great. I don't know how good it would look, especially with the first go around with it.
It says Canon will launch software that uses AI to improve the quality of video captured by ultra high sensitive cameras. Huh. So it might just simply be kind of like Topaz, where it just like it sees your image and it like improves it somehow.
I don't know. I mean, that's a whole nother podcast episode in itself. I feel like AI could totally mess it up. I was making a storyboard for a client that I'm doing a shoot for, and for some reason AI just struggles with hands. Like, give them multiple fingers or warpy hands or whatever. Like, isn't that kind of terrifying? Where if they like really, I'm sure there'll be an option to turn it off versus on, but like completely trusting an AI to make your image better. I don't know. That doesn't sit right with me. Makes me feel a little nervous for where cameras might head. But
well, what about this? I feel like AI might get better. AI, I feel like, is definitely going to get implemented in our post-production workflow as far as color correcting things, like knowing it will like learn our style of color grading, and like it will be able to color grade us without even having to do anything. Yeah. Like it'll add a lot. It'll adjust exposure perfectly to what we need it to be.
There'll be simpler things, but like taking an image that it's shooting and like using AI to make it better in camera, just I don't know. There to me feels like there could be a lot of things that go wrong.
Yeah, I don't know.
Like what if it's too sharp? Can you fix it?
Yeah, that is one thing. Digital look versus like a film look.
I don't know. I mean, like I said, if it was easily attainable, I think we would already have switched. I think we just wanted to sit down and
I think we
talk more about it.
For me, we talked about switching to the C70 for a while, but my issue with the C70 is that it's an APS-C sensor, So it's
So
when
it's
you
not
put
full
on
frame.
everything is much tighter than it. You
So-
don't like on our cameras. You can't get. You wouldn't be able to get full 24 millimeters. It'd be like 35 millimeters.
Yeah, essentially a 24 to 70 would be 35 to 80, or like 35 to
100 or something.
Yeah, I don't know how exactly it works. It crops it in, which doesn't make sense why they would make the cinema camera. I'm assuming it's cheaper to make, probably would be my guess.
Maybe.
And they just cheaped out on
It's a smaller sensor. I'm not sure how it works though, because the quality out of it is really good.
It's an incredible yeah. The C70 is an amazing camera. It just is expensive. So I think what will happen if we continue this conversation and things keep continuing this way, like you said, unless what Uno term did you use? Canon lays a draw 4.
Yeah. Canon plays a wild card or something.
Canon plays a wild card.
Canon just doesn't seem to. They tease you with little things. This camera's going to have all of these features, but we're not going to give you everything because we don't want you to just ruin our other.
We're gonna give you new things, but we're gonna take away the things that you love on the previous camera. So you're just always conflicted. And you know, do you think it's a marketing tactic?
Oh, absolutely.
Because like, let's release a camera. Let's make it be almost perfect. Let's release another camera that fixes the things that aren't perfect on the other, but make a few of the other things bad. So then, if you're so loyal to Canon, which we freaking have been, we just buy the next one. We buy the next one, hoping it's going to fix all the problems.
Yeah.
But I wonder if they selectively are making these things a little worse, or maybe the autofocus doesn't work, or the no dual native ISO, or some, like a lot of the different things we've been talking about. But like the overheating and stuff, like the big things that are the problem that are making everybody switch, like that is a dumb business move, because that is just that they are making people switch. So I don't know. It's a lot to think about. But what I was saying, I think what'll happen if everything keeps going the way it does, I bet by the summer we will both have an FX3 and a lens, and maybe 2 Canon cameras that are.
So if you're looking for Canon gear, message us.
Yeah, we can give you a heck of a deal, like $50,000 for all of our gear combined. That's a bargain too. But I bet we'll each have a Sony camera and a lens, and for this year, I'm sure we'll help each other a bit. But we'll rent Sony cameras for weddings / just suck it up and use.
Yeah, I think
like 2
we
or
only
3 of
use
our
the
Canon.
other cameras for A-roll, so like.
And it would suck in post to make it match, but like, it might be worth it to take that first step.
I've done it for 3 weddings so far, and really, it wasn't that big of an issue, but it's enough of an issue that I'd want to get everything that's the same.
So if I had a prediction, it would be by 2025, Ben and I will either be one of 2 things: completely on the Sony side, completely switched, have all the new gear, or we will have each gotten Sony, given it a try, and decide that maybe it's not worth the hype, and then we switch back to what we know. So tune back in for our next episode that will be at the end of 2025 to give you that decision.
All right, I'm gonna read through some of these things.
Yeah, hit some comments. So Ben posted like, what's the reason you like Sony better than Canon, or vice versa, or whatever, versus whatever he said. And we have some comments from fellow filmmakers all over the world.
Man, these are good.
Hit them.
Man, it just went off. People just went off on this thing. Okay. First person's response. So I said, why do you prefer Sony over Canon, or vice versa? The first person said, because it's what I have and I'm used to. Helpful. That's very helpful.
Thank you, user.
I mean, it's a valid argument. I mean, yeah, that's literally I started on Canon, so that's kind of what I've been used to. But all right, next person, James Turner.
Shout out James. Shout out Travis.
Canon has better colors. So this is opinion, I think. Canon has better colors, easier to use menus, faster use if you ask me. Better autofocus by far. That's what this person says.
Do you think they're going to start working right here?
These are pretty good audio though, so
yeah. We'll see if we'll have to move or not.
I find it much easier to color grade even in C-Log or C-Log 3. C-Log 2 being the best. I have not been a fan of Sony colors and their log colors. They kind of suck. Lastly, but most importantly, the Canon 28-70 f2, the biggest piece of lens you will ever need. They just said like that lens. But the first comment to that comment was Sony is about to drop a 24-70 f2. That's pretty sick.
We should make this a reel. So if you're watching or listening to our podcast, we'll post a reel and we'll co-post it with both of our accounts. Do you shoot on Sony or do you shoot on Canon or Panasonic or whatever the other ones are, and why? Or if you could switch, would you switch? Just curious to know if there's a lot of people like in the same situation as we are in. God, it's cold. Let's go another 10 minutes and wrap it. How long have we been going?
What does it say on there?
44.
Oh, yeah. Another 10 minutes.
Okay. Another 10 minutes and we're done. It is freezing cold out here.
God, this one comment thread is huge. Okay, Sony because low light and autofocus. Colors aren't necessarily good straight out of camera, but shooting S-Log 3 and color grading in DaVinci fixes everything about that. I agree with that. Honestly, I like the look of Sony camera bodies more.
Okay, I gotta jump in there. I agree. I think the Sony body, like the A's, the FX3, FX6, like they're cool. Like they look cool. But that is a dumb reason to pick.
Yeah,
that is a dumb reason to pick a camera brand. So for anyone, like, just because it looks cooler doesn't necessarily mean it's better, even though in this case it is.
Sony offers better video focused mirrorless camera. Canon offers better hybrid mirrorless camera. Sony offers a better mid-range cinema spec camera until Canon pull their finger out. Whatever that means. Canon's mirrorless feel better in the hands. Sony won't overheat. Canons have better colors out of camera. Obviously subjective, who cares? Sony has more affordable native lenses.
Sony does? I feel like Sony's glass is way more expensive.
I think
than
that
Canon's
he's
glass.
just saying like there's more things like Sigma and like
like alternative outside of the G series or whatever.
Yeah.
Whatever Sony.
That's definitely true because I feel like there's no hype like RF. You gotta get your RF glass. It's just like, who cares what lens you have if you got Sony? If you got an FX3,
I'm intrigued by the one that Aaron Datu used. Shout out Aaron Datu. The 35-150 f2.
That is so nice.
Like the just range that you'd have on that. Like, yeah, we'd be giving up 10 millimeters of wide, like to get the 24. But could you imagine just be like, all right, I'm gonna zoom in to 150, just right now, and then zoom out to 35. Like the versatility is so nice on that. That's probably the route I would go. But that is like a $2,000 lens too. So we'll see.
Canon has a better menu system. Sony is vastly improved, though. Fuji looks better out of camera than either of them. Panasonic offers incredible specs while being much cheaper.
Yeah, dude, what if so I had an internship out of college and they used a GH5. That thing was a beast. Like, what if we're sleeping on Panasonic?
Maybe.
I don't think Panasonic has like any cinema lenses or cinema grade cameras, but
who knows? Maybe Nikon's gonna drop right when we switch to Santa, and they're gonna literally come out with like 8K RAW for $2,500.
Yeah, that's something we could have spent the entire podcast talking about. Is Nikon bought Red?
Yeah, that's pretty crazy.
That is a wild for people that don't know. Red has been like one of the biggest camera brands, like $20,000 to $80,000 cameras, maybe even higher. And they were purchased by Nikon, which is probably the most hated camera brand out there. At least for video. I don't know about photo. I've worked with a handful of people that use them. But.
Someone had made a comment about, in a lot of these comments, I'm hearing Canon has better or at least similar autofocus. I was under the impression Sony autofocus is far superior. Am I misinformed? And then someone commented and said, I have extensive experience with Canon cameras and am not impressed with their autofocus.
Really? Because I am. Like, that is one of the sole reasons, besides financially right now, that I would stick with Canon, is because of how incredibly easy it is.
This person says, I switched from the FX30 to C70 and the colors are amazing. Doesn't look over digitized and requires less post-processing to get the same look.
That's the other thing too. I know we're talking about like outside of weddings too, but I think two of our favorite wedding videographers, Jay and Mac, Hello Tomorrow, they all use C70s. So I mean, it almost always comes back down to the gear doesn't really matter.
Some person says Canon is better for photo, Sony is better for video. Canon video file codecs are awful, and their color falls apart super quick. The UI for Canon is slightly better than Sony, but I'd argue the autofocus is equally the same. For mirrorless, I have both the R5 and FX3. R5 is last resort, despite that camera with every fiber in my body.
I think that's
Somebody says, if switching to Sony, I'll take Canon stuff off your hands.
Really?
Yeah.
Let's talk to them.
It's Chris Peely. He actually bought my USRs. Shout out, Chris.
He then he can buy my R6 Mark II since he already bought one of your cameras.
Okay. I think he has two R6 Mark IIs.
Does he want a third?
Let's see. Sony, because the colors are just better. Easier and less confusing menus. I find the S-Log3 is just so much easier to expose and color grade. Everyone stop lying. It's because you bought that camera first and you just ran with it. They both are good. Sony has better autofocus, better color in S-Log3, better low light performance, better battery performance. I'll give them that. I feel like their batteries. Like Ryan goes to weddings with like 4 batteries. I'm like, wow.
Yeah.
How are you getting through a day?
Show up with like 15 to 25.
The one thing that I found with the FX3 shooting with Ryan and Aaron, the amount of like quick access buttons you can customize on the cameras are crazy. You can do that on Canon, obviously, but FX3 has so many buttons, and even on their lenses, they have buttons that you can hit a button and it'll turn manual focus on and off. One of my main reasons for switching to Canon though is because Sony is because Travis used Sony, and I just want to be like Travis.
True. The one and only shout out Travis. Travis and Joni Films. They shoot on Sony. I don't know what. I think it's FX3 probably. I don't know for sure. I remember the A7S3 was a big camera for a while. But yeah, that's really the only reason. So Travis, just give us your stuff, and we'll trade you our Canon for all your.
Yeah. We'll bring you on the podcast. How about that?
If you buy us both the same amount, 5 Sony cameras, all FX3s and 1 FX6, with all new lenses and a couple cinema lenses, no less than $20,000, we'll let you come on the podcast.
We'll still let you come on if you don't do that, but like, we'll let it be an extra long episode.
We'll give you an extra 5 minutes. He did offer the old come over, let's grill and do a podcast. So I'm waiting for that to happen.
I use Sony, but it makes very little difference what you use these days. I could easily switch to another system. There's just a lot. There's one James Turner thread just goes on and on.
Okay, well, we're not gonna bore you guys anymore with this conversation of Sony versus Canon, but like I said, I think we just wanted to sit down and have an open dialogue. It's kind of felt like therapy. Kind of feel like
we want to switch, but we can't afford it right now.
Yeah,
we just have other stuff that we got to worry about.
So again, to prove our point, gear really doesn't matter, because if it did matter, it would be our priority to switch, and it's not.
Well, I feel like right now we're in the process of trying to get bigger paying clients. So I think once we get that solidified, then it's time to switch.
So if there's anyone out there that's getting married and wants to drop a merely pathetic $40,000 for both of us, we'll come shoot it on our half-ass cameras, and then we'll use your money to buy better cameras to make our other clients happier.
Yep.
Just kidding. But we do weddings together, so.
I wonder how much realistically we would need to switch everything out, like make an even switch. 5 cameras, or what, 4 cameras, 4 lenses, 5 lenses, 6
40.
lenses. But it doesn't have to be FX3. I'd be fine getting FX30s or A7S4 because FX30 is essentially the R7. But you get all of the features of the FX3.
Okay, 30.
I bet we could do it.
I'll drop $10K.
If we sell our equipment, I bet we could do it for $10K or less.
$10K of our own money, like not including the money we got from the sale.
You know what? I actually think like $6K. If we sell
Dude,
all of
it
our
costs
Canon,
about $6K to get one camera and a nice lens.
Okay, the FX3 it costs a lot, but I wouldn't need an FX. I wouldn't need 5 FX3. I'd 1 FX3 and then like 3 or 4 FX30s.
I think I'd want 2 FX3s and 2 FX30s. I think
I mean, it would be nice to have 2 FX3s.
That would be my dream setup. A 24-70, and then like a 35 to 150.
I will say the R7 has been a tank.
R7's a great camera, and I think the reason
it doesn't overheat.
It doesn't overheat, and the reason it's not our main camera is because that dang crop. In 4K, it's got a freaking crop.
Yeah, but it's perfect for like far away side angles. It's got that 4K fine.
It's great.
That like downsampled 7K or 6K sensor.
I love the R7. Maybe I'm just gonna sell everything but the R7s and get more R7s.
I think that's why I'm
C-Log,
okay with switching one. Like that's why I'm fine selling my main camera.
I want to try it.
I don't know. Maybe we shouldn't. Let's not switch.
Okay, so Ben's conclusion after this episode is we shouldn't switch. Mine is we should.
We're gonna switch, unless, like I said, unless Canon somehow is like, we're done. We're gonna
freaking call.
We're gonna give you everything, $3,500 or even $4,000 camera.
I'd buy if they like say they do a C90. It's everything. It's dual native ISO, full frame, great autofocus, great everything, solid, beautiful. I'd go 5,500 to 6K just for the camera alone. But because, so I don't know if we touched on it. The thing is that why it's so hard to just make the switch is because both Ben and I are so invested in Canon. We each have 4 to 5 Canon cameras. We all both have 7 to 8 Canon lenses. Like, that's a lot of money invested in our business that we would lose out on if we sold, because like obviously we can't sell it for what we bought it for.
Here we go. These are the 3 most affordable Netflix approved cinema cameras you can buy right now.
FX3,
Lumix, BGH1, which is $2,000.
it's a Netflix grade. I'm sitting here acting like Netflix is like IMAX, but like it's honestly not that great. Like
Sony FS7, 2,000 to 4,000 used. Ursa Mini,
I've heard of Ursa.
2 to 4,000 used. The best. It doesn't even have FX3 listed on this list.
It's not even on there.
It says my favorite Netflix approved cinema cameras are C70, Red Komodo, FX6, or EVA1 Panasonic, which those are all 5,500 or more. Should we get a Red Komodo? If we were going to get a C70 for $500 more, you could get a Red Komodo. Why not just get a Red Komodo? Now, my main thing with getting a better camera is getting getting the most dynamic range and low light.
Being able to shoot in log, period. What's going on here?
Obviously, if we're shooting corporate stuff, we can control the lighting.
Yeah.
But there might be a situation where we need to shoot in like a very dark spot.
Well, my thing is like I don't know what happened to this.
It's just for your own. My tailbone hurts.
Yeah, it kind of hurts. I mean, honestly, I think we're good. I think we've talked a fair amount. We've got out what we needed to say.
So
had a good therapy
I'll be
session.
curious, should we switch?
Yeah.
What do you think?
You tell us, should we switch? From an outsider perspective, listening to our conversation and our thoughts, I think you're gonna say we should switch because that's how I'm feeling, even if it's not.
If you're Ryan or Aaron or
that's it. Or,
you can't comment.
Yeah. Anyone that has an FX3 right now can't comment.
You have to have exclusively shot. Okay, Ryan can comment because he's shot Canon, and now he's on an FX3. So if you have switched before or you've exclusively shot numerous projects, that's not. I think Aaron had it like a C70 or something, or not C. He had like a Canon 70D. That always throws me off. He had a 70D or something, or a 6D Mark II or something like that.
I don't know. Now I'm kind of back to let's just get C70s.
If we got a C70, I bet they'd feel so good in our hands.
Have you ever shot on one?
No.
When I was in California for the retreat, Noah Wynn of the Soul Collective, shout out Soul Collective. I think that's their name. I shot on that for a little bit, and dude, you feel badass. Like you actually feel so sick.
I would love to just shoot something on it and then edit that footage to see.
It's a great camera. I mean, does it have dual native?
No.
Yeah, that sucks.
Like Jake was saying, they shoot on the C70. He says, yeah, once it gets dark, they switch to a neutral profile. But the benefit,
it's
you still
10-bit.
get 10-bit, but you lose the dynamic range. It's with S-Log
But that
3.
is the next step up. And in the long term, getting the C70 would be cheaper than switching completely. But I know for a fact we would buy the C70 and then the next day they come out with like the C90. And it would be so.
That's my biggest concern. I'm like getting further away from.
We've been going for a while. Let us know.
Yeah, I think we're probably gonna end up staying, but
I think we're not. So this is the nothing for either of us. And I mean, in reality, we're both completely separate businesses, so we can do whatever we want, but we just help each other so much that it's so nice.
We'll probably stay. It's better when you're in a friend group that all has the same camera.
Yeah. That's why we're not friends with Aaron or Ryan or Austin anymore.
We're just gonna leave Tim in the dust.
Yeah, I would feel bad about that, but he started late, so he'll just get to where we're at eventually.
Okay, we need to tell him now, hey, don't buy any more Canon gear.
Unless it's mine.
Tim, if you're looking, I'll give you a huge discount.
No, Tim, I've got you, dude.
I'll shoot 5 weddings for you for free.
Who's the one that got you into the industry? Huh? Whose cameras do
Who's
you
the one
already
that
have?
shared a hotel room with you?
Who did you just call this morning to tell great news?
I heard it, though, so I was part of that conversation.
Okay, anyway. What's inspired you, Ben Human?
Oh, I was not ready for this.
Dude, okay, real quick before we end, can we talk about how freaking scary geese are?
Oh my God, they're walking towards us. I would love to just. This probably sounds so bad, but like, I wish I could. I don't want to get in this situation, but I think it would be cool to tell this situation. If a goose was to attack me, you eventually would probably, like, if you couldn't get away from it, obviously you could like run or something. But if you just couldn't get away from it, you eventually would have to face it. You'd have to be like, all right, I'm just gonna kick its ass. And you literally, all you have to do is grab that thing by the neck. Like, you could literally, or just run up and punt it. That would be such a cool way to be like, yeah, I suck it.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, like...
But that sounds so mean.
No, it's not. I hate these. You can... The listeners and viewers probably couldn't hear it, but there's like geese behind us this whole time making some weird noises. And like, there was a little part of me that wish it would have attacked us. Just because we have a camera rolling. Just for content wise.
Assuming it's still recording.
Just to have that on camera, us getting attacked by geese. Like, I mean, I don't want that to happen, but I'd be happy. Okay, let's wrap it up.
So inspiring?
Yeah, I'll tell you, me first. You want me to go first so you can think about it? I went and saw Late Night with the Devil. So I've made a new goal for myself to go watch a movie in the cinema, in a theater, once a month. So a new movie or whatever, just in the theater and like take it in and pay attention to composition, narrative, all that stuff. Saw Late Night with the Devil. I'm a horror film guy. I like scary movies. Not that it was scary, but it was the most original and creative horror film that I've ever seen. And it got me just kind of fired up about filmmaking, about cinema, about all this stuff again. And yeah, it's a pretty simple one, but solid kick-ass movie. And I'm like, hell yeah.
Yeah, I love movies.
If you want to join our movie club, we're trying to start a movie club, so don't know what that looks like at all. But if you're interested, type in "interested" in the comments.
Interested. We're not gonna remember that you said that, and you're gonna be like,
"Why is everyone saying interested?"
What are you interested in? What? Inspired me recently.
All right, everybody.
Sometimes I'll like start a thought process, and then in the middle of that thought process, I'm like, I've been quiet for a little while. I just want to see how long I can go without saying anything. And I'll stop thinking about what I was thinking about, and I'm just like, is he still waiting for a response? What's inspired me? What is that the question?
Yeah, the same way we've ended every single episode. Hey, happy episode 24, by the way, I think, total.
Yeah, we thought we'd do a special one here.
Yeah. Technically it's 25, but I don't think our first one's out there. Remember episode 1, take 2? The meatless tacos?
Gosh.
Was that the first episode or was that the second episode? Like the take 2 episode?
I don't know, but why were the first couple episodes so bad?
They're all bad.
Yeah.
Newsflash, they're all just as bad.
I really appreciate the 3 people that watch these or listen to
Okay, hold on though. That's actually not true. I mean, we appreciate you. But there's like on average maybe 20 listeners per episode.
That is pretty good.
That is hard to fathom that there are 20 plus people out there that listen to us.
We also don't really put any effort into sharing anything about this.
We don't. We literally we just put it on Spotify. and say, okay, it's up. And we're like, good work.
Rarely do we. Occasionally, we'll share something on our business pages.
Could you imagine if we actually put effort into like sharing? Dude, Sony would sponsor us and just give us cameras if that was the case.
I wish that was the case.
Sony, if you're listening, we'll take some cams.
But it's inspiring me. I feel like lately, obviously, there's this whole Caitlin Clark phenomena.
You'd go as far to say it's a phenomena?
Yeah.
What's a phenomena definition?
Something almost like an epidemic. Like Taylor Swift phenomena. Like everybody's just like hyping about Taylor Swift.
Then yeah, no, absolutely. Caitlin Clark is a
like
phenomenal.
freaking. I was
Games
talking
tonight.
to Lauren about how Lauren was saying how she thinks next year there's going to be just this huge spike in girls going out for basketball and stuff like that. But I've just been really intrigued by the overall impact that she's had on women's basketball. Like I can genuinely say I've watched more. That's not true. I watched a lot of NBA, but
Shout out to your Celtics, by the way. They broke a record.
I've watched 0 men's college basketball games this year. I did watch Iowa State once, so 1. But I've watched more Iowa girls play than Iowa girls other college basketball women's teams play than any, and the impact that Caitlin Clark has had is just crazy. Like, she's been able to rally like this.
It's
just it's basketball. I mean, basketball is awesome, but like, it's just basketball. And
it's insane. Yeah, like what she's done for the sport and like women's sports overall, like it's awesome.
Like the WNBA, I'm sure their prices are they're gonna start paying them more now.
I'm super curious to see like what happens. So she's done after this year. She's had like two years of fame, like being famous. I'm curious to see like will women's college basketball stay where it is, or will it?
Well, I will probably pay attention next year to some of the team that they're playing tonight, UConn. Hopefully, when you listen to this, it's a happy ending if you're an Iowa fan.
Yeah, who knows?
But Paige Buckner, I think that's her name. She's going back to UConn next year. So there's definitely people still returning. There's like freshmen that are really good women's players. There's a couple women NCAA players that have signed with like Stephen Curry for their shoe brand and stuff. It's crazy how much in women's sports they'll call like there's so many travels that they call in women's sports, and in like the NBA or the NCAA rarely do they call travel or like little fouls.
Yeah.
I just really want to see a dunk in a NCAA women's game. I think
that'd be cool. I'd cheer every time.
I think it was done recently, but
every time Caitlin Clark gets a what's it called, a breakaway?
Yeah, breakaway.
Like dunk it, but
yeah, I don't know, that I wouldn't necessarily say inspiring. Just kind of been really intrigued by it. I have since connecting or like being inspired by Caitlin Clark. I've paid a lot more attention to the people that are filming the content for her. Like I follow the people that film a lot of the women's sports and like the videos they make, the hype videos.
Dude, sports hype videos are cool.
And so I think it would be cool if you could somehow get on board with like a college sports team. You're just like, you go to all the games and you film. They fly you to their games and stuff. You film the huddle, you film the pregame warm up, and then you sit on the sideline and you just try to get 6 shots.
It's cool.
But you
Sports
probably have to be fast at editing. Okay, anyway, I think we're done.
No, but shout out Caitlin Clark.
Yeah, we're hoping to bring her on.
Yeah. I think Dave Portnoy, you know him, owner of Barstool,
Yeah.
Pizza review guy, Miss Peaches guy. Seen anything about Miss Peaches?
I don't think so.
She just adopted a dog, and it's fun. I think they're trying to get her on their podcast, which would be pretty cool. No, but yeah, she's awesome. It's so fun to watch, and it's so fun to, like you said, see the impact of everything. And I'm not saying like she needs to fix her attitude in a bad way. Like there's a lot.
He said he hated her before.
Yeah, no.
We got on the
There's a
podcast.
lot of players, men especially men that need to fix their attitude and stuff with sports. But anyway, yeah, that's it.
All right, thanks for joining us.
Alrighty, we will see you in the next one.
All right, peace out.
Blow a kiss, and then but push the mic towards it like.
Okay, go back then.
Sorry. Okay, ready?
Wait.
Yeah, give it. You gotta loosen it up a little bit. I wonder how many people like just looked at us and been like, "What are these yahoos doing?" The problem is it's too nice of a mic stand. You can't do it.
Okay, ready?
Yep.
The setup for this last shot.
So I'm gonna say, and we'll see you in the next one, and then we'll clonk them.
All right.
All right. Well, I know for a fact we're gonna leave in everything that just happened before this. But anyways, again, thanks for listening and watching to Let's Just Talk, and we'll see you in the next one.
There you go.
Bye.